Hey guys, welcome to Galaxy CDs, Rocks, and Flips. If you're new here, my name is Ryan and I am a full-time reseller working out of my home here in the greater Cincinnati area. And this channel is all about the flip life. I'll talk about the things I've bought, some things I've sold, some things I've learned along the ways, and some mistakes I've made. In today's video, we're going to talk about a Facebook question that came to me about how one might get started in reselling. But before we get into that, I wanted to share a few things with you that have sold since the last video here at the Galaxy. First up, we have this Christie's South Kensington Maritime catalog. This was from an auction in 2003. I got it in a large lot of books. I own it for probably less than 10 cents. I've had it for some time. You can see it was discounted 35% as part of my promotional strategy for older inventory, but this item brought $15.59. It was literally just an old auction catalog. I've talked about in a previous video that anything ocean liner oriented seems to do reasonably well. Now, while this did get a pretty significant discount based on its original purchase price to me, it was still a very, very rewarding sale. Next up, I have another of these science fiction digests. This one is Amazing Stories. If you've watched any of my previous video, I've mentioned these a couple of times. I own these for 44 cents a piece. Particularly the ones with Philip K. Dick, which this is one of, seem to do really, really well. They command a little more money than the normal issues. His stuff is very, very popular. Typically, these are bringing anywhere from $8 to $10, but anything that he is in seems to bring substantially more money. In this case, it was $21.99 with free shipping. I've mentioned in the past I bought, I think it was a little over 700 of these. I have sold probably right around 20, and I'm within about 20 bucks of making all my money back on that huge investment. So over time, this is going to be a very profitable sale. Next up, 1939, essentially a owner's manual for a Westinghouse electric range. This I bought in a stack of old cookbooks and flyers at an estate sale. I've got less than a quarter in it. This is another item that you can see that was massively discounted because it's been in my inventory for a while. But even at 50% off, it brought $17.49 plus shipping. This was sold through the global shipping program, so this is another one of those items that's going overseas. I've talked about that before. If you're not participating in that program, I really see no reason not to. I generate probably a sale a day from this program, and in this case, 8 or 10 cent investment turned into $17.50 plus shipping. Next up is this Christmas beading, Mary Beadcraft. I picked up a huge lot of mostly counted cross stitch patterns. I was at an estate sale. There were, I think, 6 of the magazine storage boxes full of these things. They were asking $1 a piece for the patterns. As I've mentioned in the past, asked what they would do for all of them. I ended up getting them for $10 a box, which worked out to about 15 cents per pattern. Some of them, like this, have sold for $12, $14, $16. Some of them I've had to lot up in 2, 3, 4 to make a $10 kind of minimum purchase. They do, generally speaking, qualify for medium mail shipping because most of them do meet the minimum page requirement, and of course they have no ads in them, so they're fairly cheap to ship, and it's been a huge success. I don't know anything about counted cross stitch. I couldn't sew a button on a shirt, but when I was at the sale, I looked a couple of these up and saw that there was a potential money-making opportunity, probably not at $1 a piece, but buying them in a bulk quantity and getting all of them in one bundle has made it a very, very good option. Next up, this Sony quad radial 8-track deck. Now, I'd never heard of quad radial. I found this at an estate sale. This thing weighed, I think about 12 pounds. When I went to pick it up, it was incredibly heavy for its size. It was about half the width of a normal audio component, so it's kind of a compact looking unit. As you can imagine, I didn't have an 8-track in the car to test this out, so I took a flyer on it. I bought it for 10 bucks. I got it home. Of course, it powers up. You put a tape in, the lights come on. You hit the track advance button. Most of those lights worked and the tracks actually advanced, but the unit did not play. So what do? I got a $10 electronics item that's busted. You list it for parts and repair only. In working condition, these were bringing about $100 to $150 a piece. So I figured I'll put it up at an auction for $19.99 and we'll see what happens. Within an hour, I had a bid, so I knew I was essentially going to, at least from a gross standpoint, double my money. And then it was crickets. No more bids, no activity, nothing. I got to within about 2 hours of the end of the auction, and I looked it up just to kind of see what was going on, and I noticed that it had 8 watchers, which gave me some hope that things would kick off. And sure enough, with about 15 minutes left in the sale, my phone started going insane. Bid after bid after bid, finally closing at $64.12 for essentially a non-working piece of vintage electronics. Don't sleep on these. They're, especially 8-track decks, are in pretty good demand, and even if they don't work, 10 bucks is about as much as I would invest in one. Normally, $5 is where I want to be, but because this was such an unusual piece and new working comps were so high, I was willing to pay up a little bit, but a $10 investment that turned into a $64 sale was well worth taking the risk. Again, these model train magazines, the gift, as I've said, that just keeps on giving. This is another batch of magazines from, I believe these are also from England, which makes them a little more rare on eBay. This is a lot of 12. It's essentially a full year's worth from 1992. They sold for $36 plus shipping. I own this particular 1-year batch for 96 cents. So really, really good flip. I'm selling these consistently 1 or 2 a day, and have been since I started selling this lot in January, and probably have enough inventory to continue to do this for the next probably a year. I assume eventually I'm going to be stuck with a few years that just are not that desirable, but for now it continues to pay great dividends. Speaking of magazines, in my last video I mentioned that I had picked up a lot of old Blue Book magazines. This is another one that I picked up from that same sale. It's kind of a pulp fiction type magazine. I had this listed for $12 or best offer. I had it up for less than a day and I got an offer for $10 plus shipping. This magazine had no ads, so it could ship media rate, so the shipping was fairly cheap. This one magazine essentially paid for the entire lot of magazines that I bought at that sale. So the remaining magazines are all profit. So with that, let's talk a little bit about how you would get started as a reseller. What are kind of the bare minimum requirements? And what would you do? How would you go about getting started? In terms of requirements, pretty simple. You probably need a smartphone. You need some way to take pictures, and most of us have a smartphone. You need an account wherever you want to sell, eBay, Mercari, Poshmark, whatever your platform of choice is. Especially if it's eBay, you need a PayPal account. You might need a few shipping supplies. You've probably got empty boxes laying around. You may have Amazon boxes. You may have Jiffy envelopes for stuff that you've gotten. Those are more than acceptable to use. You don't need to go out and spend a bunch of money on that stuff right away. And you need some stuff to sell. What I would recommend is that you start with stuff you already own. So look around the house, and anything that you would potentially put in a garage sale, you should use that to get your feet wet in reselling. How would you do that? First, start with learning how to research an item and what its value would be. And is it selling? Is it worth listing? And how much can you list it for? And how much can you reasonably expect to get out of it? Learn about how to list the product, how to take photos. Practice on stuff that doesn't cost you any money. So if you don't create a good listing and you don't make a profitable sale, you're not really out anything except the item that you're giving up. The next thing I would do would be take that information and figure out how to back into profitability. And by that, I mean, if you sold an item for 10 bucks, calculate what the fees were and how much it cost you to sell that item, and then back into, if you were going to buy that at a garage sale or an estate sale, how much could you pay for it and still make it worth your while? Now, you could certainly pay, in some cases, $5 or $6 for an item that sells for 10 bucks plus shipping and make a tiny little bit of profit. But is it worth your time to clean that item, take pictures of that item, create the listing for that item, pack that item, ship that item? That's an open question, and only you can determine that. If you're willing to work for 50 cents or $1 on an item, then you can pay a lot more for stuff. But you need to have that calculation and start to think about, as you think about going out to sales, how much you can spend on items and still be profitable. The next thing, of course, would be to start going to sales, garage sales and estate sales. And what I would do, and what I did, was initially to focus on categories that I already knew something about. If you're a book lover, it could be books. If you're a music lover, it might be records. If you're a science fiction fan, it might be Star Wars toys. Whatever it is, something that you already have some knowledge of and an understanding of what the value of those things might be, so that you can make informed decisions about what you put in your inventory and how much you spend. And then as you grow and learn in that, you can start to expand your horizons into other areas. This is also an opportunity to learn on the fly how to do that research, to use the eBay app or the Mercari app and look at what's selling out there and how much are they bringing. And this is where it pays to have started to learn how to calculate what your profit is going to be. It doesn't make any sense to buy an item for $5 that's going to sell for $10 if it's going to cost you $5 or $6 to ship. So you need to have some understanding of what shipping costs are going to be for any particular size and weight of item. The biggest mistake that most new resellers make, and I certainly was guilty of it, was underestimating how much it's going to cost to ship something. Especially bigger items, because you get into what the USPS considers dimensional weight. Boxes over a certain cubic volume cost more to ship than an equivalent smaller package of the same weight. And if you don't calculate that in, if you're not thinking of that or not aware of that, you're gonna get burned. And to some extent, that's the best way to learn. I learned very quickly that if I was going to ship a big item that was heavy, I needed to be pretty sure what the measurements of the box were going to be before I listed the item, so that I didn't get caught out. If you make a mistake and you've got the weight right but the size wrong, it can get really expensive really quickly. With that, you're going to make mistakes. We all do. And it's what you do once you've made that mistake that will either further your potential career, or certainly at least your opportunity to make money as a reseller, or whether, like a lot of others, you just give up. There is tremendous money to be made in this, be it part-time as a way to supplement income or pay for a vacation, or to eventually leave your full-time job and do this to make your living. The only way you get there is by getting started. And that would be my first tip. Whether you start by going to garage sales, selling your own items from home, however you choose to get started, the only way to start down that path is to get on eBay or get on Mercari and make that first listing and get going. If you have any other suggestions, please feel free to leave them in comments. I'd like to know how you got started, why you got started, and the things that you've learned along the way. So please leave me a comment, If this is the kind of video that you like, feel free to click that thumbs up button for me and let YouTube know. It helps the YouTube algorithm. I'd like to get more than 20 views on some of these videos, so if you could help me out with that, I would truly appreciate it. You can also feel free to subscribe and whack that bell notification icon so that you're notified each time I do a new video. I'm going to close with that. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it. And as always, thank you for spending some time with me. And now it's time to sell. Thanks, guys.